Hello everyone, how are you today? And welcome to our 7th seminar of Gender and Power in Asia. Did you have a good weekend? I hope you had a good weekend. So let's get started. What we are going to today is to look at child rearing in Asia and men's roles in it, particularly a concept called ikumen as a case study. And then we'll look more about the issue of child rearing, particularly population control in Asia. And then we'll have a very brief preview of what we're going to do on week 9. Because we're going to have a week off next week as it is a reading week. So let's get started. I hope you have already have a group for your group presentation. I hope you did start making group from last week for your group presentation. And for your final essay, which will be our very last assignment, we'll start talking about the final essay from week 9, which is next seminar. I'm sorry, it says week 8 because it really depends on whether you count next week as one of the weeks or not counting it because it's a reading week. But anyway, we're going to start talking about the final essay from our next seminar, and don't worry, we have plenty of time for that. So let's have a quick question. Why is reproduction important in Asia? So the issue of reproduction is important, particularly in many Asian societies. As we discussed last week, having children is seen as important in many parts of Asia, especially in relation to marriage. So can you think about any reasons why? Why is reproduction important in Asia? So I hope we've got some really interesting answers to this question. But what we want to focus today are two of these answers, which are aging society and family values. Some of you might have come up with these. So what is about aging society? So Asia's population is aging actually. So in many parts of Asia, having an aging population is becoming a kind of serious problem, particularly in Japan, which has percentage of 33.1%. Actually, those of the whole population are those who are aged 60 or older. And it's expected to grow up to 37.3% in 2013, as you can see in this graph. South Korea is kind of slightly doing better than Japan at the moment. Its aging population is only 18.5%, which is slightly less compared to Japan. But what is serious about is South Korea is growing older faster than any other country. So the older population is projected to grow from 18.5% in 2015, about 4 years ago, to 31.4% by 2013. And obviously, in order for the population to replace itself without immigration or bringing people from outside the country, they need children. And in many Asian countries, babies out of wedlock is still rare. So in order for people to have children, they have to get married first in many parts of Asia. So that's why marriage and aging society is related. The second point is family values. Relating to the association between reproduction and marriage, many countries in Asia, especially Southeast Asia and East Asia, adulthood marriage reproduction are tied strongly. So this is a kind of path that many people are expected to follow in these countries and societies. This is particularly important to see that having a family, which not only means to get married, but having children is often seen as a symbol of maturity. And needless to think, hard, the importance imposes more weight to women who are expected to get married within certain age. And as more women are expected to have higher educations and work, the negotiation between the two have become more and more difficult. And related to the issue of aging society, the issue of reproduction for states like Japan, where women are increasingly delaying marriage, have two major interrelated concerns, which are low fertility rate and encouraging more women to join and continue working as full-time workers in order to address labor shortage. But this makes it difficult for women to have family and especially children. So I'm going to show you this very short clip which tells us about what it's like for mothers who also want to keep their careers are kind of encountering in Japan. So let's have a look. Yep. And this is a table that indicates birth per women, which is surveyed by the World Bank. And there are three columns. One is in 1967, so about 50 years ago. And the middle one is from 1987, so about 30 years ago. And the last one is from 2017, so 2 years ago, and it's a more kind of contemporary and current one. And you can see that in places like Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, and South Korea, where we talked about last week, it's kind of these are places where women are increasingly delaying marriage. And you can see that in these places, birth per women are also declining quite significantly, particularly in South Korea, where it has gone down to 0.98% in 2018, last year. So now, women in South Korea are having less than one child, and it's really impacting their population. So let's have a look at what it's like in South Korea and how they perceive a declining birth rate. So let's have a look. Okay, so what did you think? It looks quite serious, isn't it? And this week's ratings, especially the New York Times article, indicate that in Japan, women still tend to do much of domestic work than their male spouses, even if they both work full-time. And this has been seen as a factor that makes it difficult for women to pursue full-time work while having a family. And as we just saw in this video about South Korean case, like some men think that women should give up their careers to focus on reproduction or reproducing to support the population of the country, which sounds quite like horrible, but that's what some people think. And these are kind of reflected on these tables, which indicate about the gap between women and men and how many hours they do spend in doing domestic work or housework. And in Japan, surveys find that women still do more domestic work than men. So Japanese men do the least amount of domestic work in the global survey, But the women also work less overall than in many other countries, and that's very similar to South Korea. Like South Korean men are kind of in the group that they're doing least amount of domestic work, but also women are in the group that they're where like they're doing the least amount of domestic work. So it's kind of a little bit hard to say, or we have to be a little bit careful about like men like Japanese men and South Korean men like not doing domestic work, which is to a certain extent true, but also we have to consider how many what amount of domestic work also women are doing, and they're in the kind of so much less compared to the world average. So it's a little bit tricky, but it's true that women are doing so much more domestic work comparing to their male counterparts in places like Japan and South Korea. And this brings us to this concept of ikumen, which is another, which is the focus of another reading for this week. So, like the concept of unmarried women or hitori-sama that we discussed last week, Japanese culture created the term ikumen, which also means hanky dads. What I want to point out now is, as explained in the reading for this week, ikumen has a very strong government involvement in Japan. So ikumen was created by advertising agencies, which is very similar to the concept of ohitori-sama. Both of these concepts are created by advertising agencies first. But what made ikumen a little bit different from ohitori-sama is the interest that the government showed in the concept. So ikumen as a concept didn't become popular or well-known until the Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare, Akira Nagatsuma, mentioned in one of his speeches in 2010 for promoting of more active fathering. And since then, ikumen has shown like a strong government involvement. For example, there's a Ikumen of the Year, which is an award, but it's the government-oriented award given to these men who are thought to be embodying this concept of ikumen. And also there's Ikumen Project, which is has like a website and a particularly enthusiastic about making more and more men taking parental leave. And there's a website of dedicated to the Ikumen Project, and it shows like a video of the award of Ikumen of the Year, and also they created like a song that no one would sing. So it's really funny to look at this website. Unfortunately, it's only in Japanese, so some of you might not be able to read the content of the website. But all these indicate that the idea of ikumen has become very much Japanese government oriented. So let's have a look at what ikumen is actually like in Japan, and how they are conceived and how they are treated in Japan. So this is a video that is showing about ikumen and its campaign. So let's have a look, and I hope you enjoy it. So what did you think about the video and the concept of ikumen? Is it appealing? Well, so let's turn to a couple of questions and discussions that I prepared like we always do. So we have a couple of questions and discussions about Ikumen, and also we have couple of activities and questions for the second part of this week's topic, which is about population control in Asia. So what I want you to think about is like this simple question: is having a child or having children like a personal issue, or is it more like a public issue that the government is entitled to have a say about and control over? Who controls and whose concept or issue that having a child and bringing up a child is what I want you to think about. So I now hand over to Olive, and I hope you enjoy all these questions and discussions, and I'll be back at the end to give you a bit of preview for next seminar's topic. So enjoy. And now I'm fast forwarding the slide to get to the end. Oh, here we are. Hello again. So as I said earlier in today's seminar, that we are not going to have any class next week because next week will be a reading class, reading week. So no class. So in 2 weeks' time, the next seminar topic is fashion and female identity or ideal beauty in Asia. So what we're going to look at is whether fashion and appearance is closely intertwined with identity, including gender identity, and how women's appearance, for example, fashion, makeup, and bodily aesthetics has been used by institutions like the government or the police, which are like often embodying male authorities, or even families or schools, to regulate and impose restrictions on women and their agencies, but as well as how these can be used or reclaimed by women themselves to challenge, negate, and subvert such controls. And what is the idea of ideal feminine beauty in Asia? And is there preference on pale complexion like pale skin, signaling the westernization of Asian women, which are kind of a common accusation that people make for particularly young people in Asia? Or much more complex notions of cultural syncretism or cultural hybridization or culture mixing. So female ideal beauty can be a good testing ground as we will look at gender and national identities in Asia. And guess what? I am going to be in Hong Kong in 2 weeks' time to do this class or to do this topic with you. So I'm very, very excited to be in Hong Kong in 2 weeks' time. So see you in Hong Kong and enjoy 1 week of no class. Okay.